So she got her start in Democratic politics the old-fashioned way through her mother and her grandmother, like a lot of us here today. She is an inspiration for us for District 4 because in her first congressional race, she crushed a long-term incumbent with a 2-to-1 registration advantage. She's doing great things for women going into politics with her Off the Sidelines group, which recruits, mentors, and supports women to be elected to higher office. And I didn't have to, I had one job, and I think I lost a card. Oh, okay. Anyway, put your hands together, Story County, for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
Hey everybody, how are you? I just want to give a huge shout out to my best friend in the Senate, Cory Booker. Cory Booker's in the house. I love Cory, and I love his team. They're some of our best friends in Washington. He has an amazing team, I gotta tell you, and an amazing person. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself, why I'm running for president and why I'm gonna win. Okay? So for those who don't know anything about me, I got my start in politics a long time ago in upstate New York. I loved politics as a little girl because my grandmother loved politics. She came from very modest means. She worked every day of her life. She was a secretary in our state legislature, and she took me along to work. She took me along on campaigns, and I got to know how important women's voices are, how important grassroots activism is, how important our democracy is, straight from my grandmother. And I just have a couple of early childhood memories that I'm going to share with you because they're funny. One is my first campaign headquarters, hot August day. All the women are wearing cotton shift dresses, just like a lot of ladies here. And they're stuffing envelopes, and I'm about 10, and I'm just mesmerized by these women. And they're stuffing and stuffing and stuffing, and what I'm most mesmerized about is their arms, their jiggly arms. They're just jiggling back and forth and back and forth. And I'm thinking in my head, I want to be just like them someday. Jiggly arms, of course. We got them, we all got them. So I really loved campaigns. I loved politics. I really loved it when I was a teenager. My grandmother said, Kirsten, you take this stack of bumper stickers and you see that car park out there. You go put these bumper stickers on every car. I said, Grandma, really, every car? She said, yes, every car. So I was in charge at 15 of black box operations. So I know all about campaigns and politics, and I know it's such an important part of who we are because it's an extension of our values. It's an extension of our beliefs and who represents them best. I had a role model in my mom, too. She's somebody who was one of only 3 women in her law school class. And I just talked to her about Pride because this is an important month for all of us. And she was a family lawyer. She was a mom who had clients of people who wanted to buy a home or adopt a baby or write a will. And because she was one of only a few women in the entire community, a lot of the gay community came to her. So when women wanted to buy a house together, she would make sure that they had the legal documents and write the contract. When a man was dying and his gay partner, he wanted to leave everything he owned, my mother would write that will for them. And so I was raised in a family that believed that everyone matters. Everyone matters. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, or who you love. Every single person matters, and I'm going to be a president that does that in my presidency. So when I first decided to run for Congress, it took a long time. It took me about 10 years of working on other people's campaigns before I had enough courage to say, I really want to run myself. And so when I did run for Congress, I ran in upstate New York in my 2-to-1 Republican district. Now this district was red. It was very red. And the only person who thought I could win was my mother. No joke, no joke. And in fact, I did call a pollster. I called a really smart guy who works for me now named Jeffrey, and I said, Jeffrey, I'm desperate to run for Congress in New York 20, my home district. Look it up and tell me if I can win. He looks it up and he says no. And I said, Jeffrey, honestly, come on. I'm really good at raising money. I could raise $2 million. I'm good at it. I can get my message out. I definitely can win if I raise the money, right? He said, nope. He said it's 2-1 Republican, and so there's not enough Democrats to vote for you. It's just not, it's just not done. And I said, well, I could run the perfect campaign, and you can't say perfect campaign plus money isn't a winner. He said, Kirsten, I'm sorry, there are more cows than Democrats in your district. So then I say to him, well, Jeffrey, what happens if this guy gets indicted? I could clearly win then, right? And he said, well, it depends what he gets indicted for. So I know tough politics. I know red districts. I know purple districts, and I know how to win them. So I won that race, and I won the next race. And both opponents never took me seriously. They did the exact thing that President Trump will do when I'm the nominee. In fact, he dismissed me, he demeaned me, he name-called me. There wasn't a thing he didn't do. The first guy, he said things like, she's just another pretty face. And I said, thank you. And then I talked about all the things that I was going to do as a member of Congress. Back then in 2006, it was all about getting our troops out of Iraq and how they were mired in this war and people were dying and there was no oversight or accountability over the George Bush administration. I also ran, interestingly, on Medicare for all. Yeah. Because back then, we didn't even have Obamacare. So there was no protection if you didn't have coverage and you had a pre-existing condition. There was no protection against discrimination, and the rates just kept going up and up. And so I learned and I saw that what if you could buy Medicare at a percentage of your income, just maybe 4 or 5%? Imagine if anybody could buy it at a price they could afford, and imagine it just creating competition with the private insurance industries. A lot of people would have it, they'd pick it, it would be better. So I ran on Medicare for all, and I won. When I ran for re-election, again, a new guy decides, I'm going to berate her, I'm going to dismiss her, I'm going to demean her, I'm going to say mean things about her. Sure did, and he was a self-funder. And he spent $7 million. Do you know how much money that is in a sleepy upstate New York campaign? That meant the airwaves were covered for months. And he ran really negative ads. His ads were so negative. It was pictures of my face in red, flames coming out of my head, a very dark voice saying, she's not who you think she is. And that year, I had a toddler. Theo was only 3 then. I was pregnant out to here with Henry. By election day, I had an infant and a toddler. We learned something that's true in politics. You cannot win a congressional campaign with negative ads against a young mother with an infant and a toddler. And so I won that race, 2-1 Republican. I won that race with a 24-point margin. And I've never lost that district since. I've since represented the whole state of New York, had 3 elections, have the highest vote total in the history of the state at 72%. That's higher than Obama, it's higher than Hillary, it's higher than any person who's ever run for Senate or governor ever in New York. And in my last election, I won back 18 counties that went to Trump. Yeah. So I know I can win red places. I know I can win purple places. And I know I can win blue places because I've done it my whole career. I also know I can bring people together to get things done. There's not a Republican in Congress that I can't work with. And I really mean that statement. I just passed a bill unanimously with Ted Cruz. I can work with anybody, and that's necessary because the truth is what President Trump has done is divide this country. He's divided us on every racial line, every religious line, every socioeconomic line, and he's done it purposefully to make us fearful. He has spread fear and division and hate and anxiety. He wants us to fear our neighbors. He wants us to fear immigrants. He wants us to fear refugees. And that is not who this country is at our best moments. Every moment where we've done the brave thing, every moment when we've reached and made sure more people had more rights, whether we fought for suffrage or whether we fought for civil rights or whether we fought for LGBTQ equality, what's made this country so great is when we do welcome others and we do fight for others, when we actually live by the golden rule, when we treat others the way we would want to be treated, when we love our neighbor. And so I'm running for president because I will restore what's been lost. I will restore the moral integrity that this country is known for. I will restore our place on the world stage as that beacon of light and hope and what's right. Because we need a president who's brave. We need a president who will take on the battles that other people won't. Our president, he demeans the vulnerable. He actually punches down. Our president is not just a bully, but he's a coward.
Yeah.
So as president of the United States, I will be that president who takes on the battles that no one else will. I will do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And you know why I will do that? Because I've done it every step of my career. I've taken on the Pentagon twice. First over the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah.
And more recently, over sexual violence in the military. I don't give up, and I don't stand down. I've taken on Congress many times. As a freshman congressperson, first person to post my earmarks, my schedule, my financial disclosure, and my taxes online. First person ever to do all those 4 things. I've taken on Congress with the greed and corruption. I've actually passed legislation to ban insider trading by members of Congress because there is so much corruption. In this campaign, the first bill that I've actually introduced is a publicly funded elections bill to get money out of politics. Because the biggest corruption in Washington is the greed and corruption that drives all policy. It's the millions of dollars the Koch brothers spend every cycle to make sure their taxes go down. It's the millions of dollars that the drug companies spend, that the insurance companies spend, that the polluters spend, that the fossil fuel industry spends, that the NRA spends. It's the millions and millions of dollars that make all the things we want to accomplish impossible. If you want to pass a Green New Deal, you're better willing to take on the polluters and the fossil fuel companies. That's why I'm banning fossil fuel money in my campaign and banning corporate lobbyist money.
Yeah. Good for you, Kirsten.
If you want to pass healthcare as a right and not a privilege, you better be willing to take on the drug companies and the insurance companies because they're going to come for you with everything they have. And if you want to end gun violence in this country, and today is a day we are in mourning for all those who were lost, you've got to be willing to take on the NRA. And the NRA is entirely motivated by the greed and corruption of the gun manufacturers. So that is what we have to do. So we need a president who's brave. We need a president who will stand up to do what's right, no matter how hard it is. Even as a member of Congress from New York, I've stood up to the banks. As a freshman member in Congress, when we had the financial collapse, I read the bill. It was designed entirely to leave taxpayers holding the bag. So I voted against that bailout twice. So I can tell you, there is not a fight that I am not willing to fight. There is not a corrupting, a powerful, there is not a special interest that I won't take on to do what's right. That's why I'm running for president. And that's why I'm going to win.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer some questions.
I'd like to sing my question.
Yes, please go ahead.
How do you solve a problem like McConnell?
It's a very good question. So we have 2 ways to solve the problem. The first one is to beat him in the next election in 2020 and flip the Senate. Now, we have great candidates, and I dare say you have an enormous opportunity here in Iowa. That's amazing. So we have a huge opportunity here. We have opportunities in Maine, in Colorado, in North Carolina. We even have opportunities in Texas and Montana and Georgia. So we're trying to recruit the best candidates we can right now. So I hope that by, let's say, the end of the year, we have the best 7 or 8 candidates around the country to take on those seats. I know one who's already decided, who's amazing, my friend Mark Kelly, who's running in Arizona, and we just won Arizona with Kirsten Sinema. So if Kirsten can win, I bet Mark can win. He's married to my best friend Gabby Giffords from the House. So I believe they can win Arizona together. The second way to beat Mitch McConnell is to shine light into what he does and when he does that's wrong, and it works. And I'll give you 2 examples when I feel like I outmaneuvered Senator McConnell. There's only 2. Yeah, it's rare, but it happens. So most recently, I really wanted to pass this bill about ending sexual harassment in Congress. And I worked on the bill with Ted Cruz. This is the one we worked on together. We got about 30 co-sponsors, widely bipartisan. We found some common sense solutions. The House passes the bill. And so I'm like, well, all we need to do is get a vote on this. We just need a vote. And the House passed the bill when it was Republican-led. This was not under Nancy. This is the last Congress. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we have such a chance. We just need a vote. It's going to pass. And no matter what I say, no matter what I do, we cannot get the vote. So I decide you have to shine that light. You have to take on the fight that no one else will. So I tweet, it's been 90 days since the House of Representatives passed this bill unanimously. What is Mitch McConnell hiding? So that created fireworks all across the Capitol. And so then it's been 95 days since the House passed this bill unanimously. What is Mitch McConnell hiding? It's been 100 days since the House, and it worked. So that bill eventually got sent to the Rules Committee. They pushed out a bill. It passed unanimously. Done. The other time, I wanted to tell one more. The other time is really funny. So this is when I'm a freshman senator. And this is how I get things done. So this is why you should support me and caucus for me. Because I really, there's no battle too small. Okay, so 9/11 health. So after 9/11, our first responders raced up those towers. They did the thing that I can't even conceive of doing. They did the thing that they died for. So many of them died. And many of them then, after the towers fell, they stayed on the pile looking first for survivors and then the horrible work of finding remains. They stayed for weeks and months, and George Bush lied to them all. His EPA said the air was safe. It was not safe. They breathed in all these horrible toxins, and now they're dying. More firefighters have died since 9/11 than on 9/11 because of these horrible cancers. So as a freshman member of the Senate, Senator Schumer says, Kirsten, this is your bill. You need to work on this. I said, oh, okay. And so didn't know how hard that was, but I went back to my office and I started talking to my chief of staff, and I said, okay, we need to figure out the things we need to do to get this done. He said, oh, Kirsten, you can't pass this bill. No one wants to help New York. This is never going to happen. And I'm like, never? Really? Why would you say never? I'm not accepting never. Let's at least do the 10 things you would have to do to pass the bill. So we start doing those 10 things. We write the bill. We write it with all the advocacy groups. We improve upon the House version. We offer the bill. We ask for a hearing. We have the hearing. We start finding allies and we start getting coverage. We have lots of press conferences. The first responders show up. They come to Congress week after week, month after month, knock on every door, tell their story. This is all working. We have Jon Stewart spends 2 whole episodes on the 9/11 first responders, and then we get a lot of coverage from MSNBC, and then a lot of coverage from CNN, and we're thinking, yeah, this is working, but it's still not working. We don't have the co-sponsors. And so I think, oh my God, I got to go into the lion's den. I got to go to Fox News. So I go to Fox News. The lion's den, but it could be the liar's den. Yes, it could.
I thought that was a good one.
The lion's den. So I go to the lion's den and I meet with, guess who? Roger Ailes. And so I say, Roger, you say you're the party of first responders. Why are you helping our first responders here? I convinced him, and he said he would. And so then we had something happen. This is the second thing I learned that's true in politics. When you have Jon Stewart on one side and Fox News on the other side, you're going to win. And so when we finally had the vote on it, it passed unanimously. Now, the reason why I know I won is because as soon as that vote passed, and I'm a freshman senator, this is 10 years ago, Mitch McConnell walks up to me and says, Kirsten, I appreciate your advocacy for the 9/11 first responders, but could you now please stop? So we created the climate by which people had no space to vote against. And sometimes you need to do that. So sometimes you need sugar, sometimes you need vinegar, and you have to know when you use both. But that's how you get things done in Washington. And so as president, I'm going to do the hard things that are necessary. I'm going to get the money out of politics. I'm going to have publicly funded elections. I'm going to bring Democrats and Republicans together to do the right thing. And if they're unwilling, I will create the climate around the country that there's nowhere else to go but to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Don't be shy.
Collective bargaining rights.
Yeah. Yes. So I support collective bargaining rights. I support our unions. And I think we need a president who's going to focus on how we reward work in this country and how we strengthen the middle class. And I would do at least 3 things. The first thing I would do is strengthen our unions, making sure that working men and women have the right to collectively bargain and to be able to use union power to make sure they have better wages and better benefits. We know in union households, we know in union communities that their wages are 25% higher than anyone else, and it lifts up all the wages in that community. So if you want to build the middle class, support unions. Second point. I would start shifting the infrastructure of work. We have not focused as a nation on rewarding work in at least 30 or 40 years. We just haven't. And so that's why you have to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, get rid of the tip wage so everyone has access to a living wage, and index it to inflation. Pass infrastructure like a national paid leave bill. The fact that so many workers have to ramp off every time there's a family emergency, a dying parent, an ill spouse, a new child, and the more you ramp off, the less you earn, and you never really ramp back on where you left with the same seniority and the same pay. So have national paid leave. Other infrastructure which helps families thrive in the workplace is have affordable daycare, have universal pre-K, and have equal pay for equal work. Those are the structural changes. The last point. We need to train people more because there's so much underemployment. Even in Iowa, you have a relatively low unemployment rate, but then why is 20% of your population living in poverty? The reason is underemployment. It means that people are working more than one job, sometimes 3 jobs, cobbling together hours, but actually aren't earning enough to provide for their families or themselves. And so the solution is, and what works in Iowa and works in other places, is this issue of job training. Actually work with our community colleges, our state schools, our apprenticeship programs, and our not-for-profits. Ask them to collaborate with the local employers to create the coursework that results in a job by the local employer. I will give you one example. In upstate New York, when Bombardier needed advanced welders, they couldn't find any within 500 miles. So they went to the community college and asked them to provide this exact coursework. They did. They've already trained and placed 100 workers. Once those workers got that training, they were eligible for a $70,000 a year job. That is how you build the middle class, and that is how you reward work in this country. Okay, last one.
Everybody here who has enjoyed her speech today, I would appreciate it if you go online and donate to her so she can get in the first debate where she belongs.
Thank you. Kirsten, go ahead.
Refugees that are sitting in camps around the world.
Yeah.
A lot of them
Yes.
from wars that we started.
Yes.
And they've been vetted by the UN, and Trump is lowering the level. We're not doing our share.
I agree. So I couldn't agree with you more on this because it makes us less safe. The worst thing we've done is turn a blind eye to suffering. It's the worst thing of all the things President Trump's done. He's done a lot of really bad things. I think as a mother and as a senator, to me, the worst thing he's done is turn a blind eye to suffering of children that are dying and starving in Yemen, of children and families that are dying and displaced in Syria, of gang violence and civil war and criminal communities that cannot be overcome in Central and South America. He literally turns a blind eye. And I'll give you a story. When I went to Syria, I've been on the Armed Services Committee now for 10 years. And I took a delegation of senators with me to visit what was happening with regard to the Syria crisis. This was now probably 7 years ago. And we went to the refugee camps in Turkey. And we met with parents, mothers mostly, who were in these refugee camps. And the mothers came and met with us, and with anger, tears of anger in their eyes, they looked at us and they said, "You are so afraid of Osama bin Laden. Your lack of care is creating 1,000 every day." And she's right. Because people are dying, people are hopeless, and we are the wealthiest country in the world. And the Statue of Liberty used to stand for something. It used to stand to be this beacon of light and hope, and Emma Lazarus' poem used to stand for something. Send us your tired, send us your poor, send us your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And that is something that President Trump has ripped apart and destroyed. And so I would do a lot of things different. I would restore our moral leadership on the world stage, day one. I would make sure we can take more refugees from all around the world, because I know in places like upstate New York, we have mayors that welcome refugee communities, because when they do, their populations are shrinking. So when they do, these communities create growth. They create opportunity. They create economic growth. Yes, we can. And at the border, I would not pay for-profit prisons to lock up children and families. Just wouldn't. I would stop that program, and I would do it differently. I would actually fund the anti-terrorism work, the border security related to human trafficking, gun trafficking, and drug trafficking, and I would keep that under Homeland Security and fully fund it. The rest, the immigration pieces, I would put back under Department of Justice. I would have real immigration judges that are appointed for life, not just lackeys of the Attorney General. And when families do come across, I would make sure they are assigned a lawyer. They have community-based processing. They are allowed to live with sponsor families. And when they have a lawyer, it's something like 90+%. It's like 95% show up to their hearings. It actually works. So create a process that's humane and actually works, and don't lock up children and mommies. So thank you all for letting me address your amazing event. Thank you, Renee. So I am going to amplify the one amazing woman who stood up and said, "Help Kirsten." I need to guarantee my spot on that debate stage, and I need to earn my spot there. But I can't earn my way if people don't go to KirstenGillibrand.com and give some amount, any amount. It doesn't matter. It just shows that I have enough grassroots support to earn that spot. And so, please, at any time between now and tomorrow, please go online and help my campaign so I can have my voice heard. And I want to be heard because I am carrying the stories and the pain and suffering of so many Americans, and I know that I will fight for them in a way that perhaps no one else can. Thank you so much.